8 months ago, my husband William blindsided me with the news that he had impregnated his mistress, and thus, we needed to separate. He delivered this life-altering message casually, leaving me completely shocked and drained of any feelings I once had for him. "Is the mistress someone I know?" I asked. "Yes, it's Elizabeth. You met her at Nova's wedding reception," he replied. The revelation stung even more knowing the affair had been ongoing since Nova's wedding, which was almost 3 years ago. Nova, a college friend of mine, and Elizabeth, a junior from our days at university, were both part of the same research group. I remembered Elizabeth. She was the one we all called Little Devil behind her back, a nickname that seemed all too apt now. Reflecting on the past, I realized how unashamed William had been. Time indeed flies, and so has my husband's integrity, it seemed. I am Mia, 31 years old. I met William through the college tennis club where he, being 4 years my senior and an alumnus, would often return to mingle. He was charismatic, always surrounded by friends, and particularly attentive to the newcomers, especially the girls. His friendly nature had charmed me, but it became clear after we married that his kindness was not as all-encompassing as I had believed. William's true nature slowly unveiled itself once I began working. The reason he spent so much time at the tennis club wasn't out of some alumni loyalty. It was because he was largely overlooked at his job due to his incompetence. He lacked serious responsibilities, which gave him ample free time, and there was no sign of any career advancement on his horizon. I had hoped marriage would change him, but his persistent refusal to grow forced me to give up. The only reason I hadn't pursued a divorce sooner was out of respect for his genuinely decent parents. Now, facing the reality of his infidelity and the impending arrival of a child from that betrayal, William proposed a quick separation. "You can keep the apartment. I'll leave," he said with a dismissive ease that only fueled my resolve. As I approached my 40s, the desire for a child of my own grew stronger, contrasting sharply with the life I was currently leading. Earning more than my aimless husband, I was more than capable of supporting myself. It was clear that this painful revelation was not just the end of our marriage, but an unexpected push toward a new beginning for me. At my company, we had excellent parental and maternity leave policies, which made me feel ready to start a family. However, despite my readiness, having a baby just wasn't happening, and the emotional toll was significant. To make matters worse, my affection for my husband had evaporated after discovering his affair and the pregnancy that resulted from it. I was determined to end our marriage cleanly and permanently. The fact that my husband didn't even apologize for his actions only fueled my anger. He laid out his needs and demands without a hint of regret, making it clear that our long-standing relationship needed to end. My next steps were straightforward: hire a lawyer, seek compensation, and begin the property division process. I was also prepared to involve Elizabeth in the legal proceedings. But I don't have that kind of savings, and Elizabeth's pregnant. I don't want to stress her out, my husband protested weakly. "Well, then, you should take on the debt yourself. It's your affair that's led us here, so you need to take full responsibility," I countered firmly. Faced with my resolute stance, he eventually conceded, suggesting he might ask his father to help with the debts. As I moved forward with the divorce, my in-laws intervened, calling me repeatedly to plead for reconciliation. My father-in-law even broke down, fearing for his son's future without me, while my mother-in-law treated me with affection, imploring me to reconsider as she loved me like her own daughter. However, after laying bare the extent of my husband's infidelities and his general irresponsibility at home, even they came to understand my decision. "We are truly sorry," they admitted, their disappointment evident. They ended up paying the compensation on behalf of their son, who lacked the funds himself, and sternly warned him not to depend on them financially again. I often wondered how such responsible and decent parents could have raised a son who turned out so carelessly irresponsible. Following the divorce, I moved back to my recently relocated family home. The process, which I had anticipated to be a hassle, concluded more swiftly than expected. Half a year passed, and life settled into a new rhythm of work and home responsibilities. Then one day, my friend Nova called, clearly upset. "Mia, did you hear? Your ex-husband William and Elizabeth are now flaunting their new life in a high-rise apartment. And get this, Elizabeth invited me to a lavish baby shower where gifts are expected to be over $200 and there's a hefty entry fee too. Can you believe that? She exclaimed. I hadn't even known that Elizabeth had given birth. The news was a shock, but it also reaffirmed my decision to leave that chapter of my life firmly in the past. I was baffled when Nova told me that Elizabeth had invited her to the baby shower. It made no sense. Both my ex-husband, William, and Elizabeth knew that Nova was my closest friend. Why would Elizabeth reach out to her, knowing full well that Nova would share everything with me? As I shared my confusion, Nova's frustration boiled over. She did it deliberately. That awful woman actually gloated to me, saying she's so happy now that you and William split. She's the worst, Nova fumed, eager to confront Elizabeth about her manipulative behavior. Elizabeth, who we used to call the little devil back in our college days, seemed to have evolved into something far more sinister. In college, she had a reputation for meddling in relationships, unfazed even if her actions caused couples to argue or split. She'd claim with a smirk that if a relationship could be shaken by another person's interest, it wasn't true love to begin with. Reflecting on this, I felt sorry for Elizabeth, pitying her for never having experienced genuine love. However, I was wise enough not to engage with her directly. For now, I chose to keep my distance. My main concern wasn't Elizabeth, it was avoiding any awkward encounters. Nova then mentioned something about the high-rise where William and Elizabeth were living. It's the only new one around. Did you hear when they moved in? She asked. They just got lucky recently when a spot opened up. Someone had to relocate for work right after buying an apartment there, Nova explained. That made sense. As we continued talking, Nova reminded me, Mia, you're moving this Sunday, right? The baby shower is on Saturday, so you just need to be cautious for one day. The building has plenty of elevators, and the entrances are different. We've never run into each other, so it should be fine. However, despite our best-laid plans, I unexpectedly bumped into William and Elizabeth in the elevator hall on the first floor. They were stepping out just as I arrived to wait for the elevator. Our eyes locked. There was no avoiding them now. Hey, Mia, what are you doing here? William broke the silence first. Elizabeth quickly added, with a falsely cheerful tone, Mia, are you here to celebrate with us? You wanted to see our adorable baby, didn't you? Her smile was bright, but her eyes betrayed her insincerity. Flustered by their presumptuousness, I replied, No, I'm just here for the elevator. I switched to a more formal tone, trying to maintain decorum in an awkward situation. To me, William was no longer someone I knew, but a stranger connected to a past I wanted to forget. I didn't want to escalate the situation into a scene. So, you're planning to come to my house after all?
You are so silly, Mia.
Stop being so stubborn. You're probably just jealous that we live in this super luxurious high-rise and that our adorable prince was born. You still love me and feel lonely, don't you? Just admit it. You wanted to see me again, William said, provoking me with his assumptions. Elizabeth chimed in, her tone patronizing. Mia, that's not acceptable, no matter how much you love William. I'm the one he's married to now. It's a crime to barge into our home, uninvited. Are you jealous, Elizabeth? You're really cute. So sorry, Mia, but Elizabeth and our prince are a priority now, so you're not welcome here. It had been 8 months since I had seen my ex-husband, and his delusions were as grandiose as ever. Elizabeth, too, seemed utterly incomprehensible. They were indeed a match made in a peculiar kind of heaven. I lamented the years I had spent with William during my 20s, feeling utterly ashamed of having dated and married him. If I had left him sooner, I wouldn't be subjected to this absurd dialogue. My silence seemed to irritate William further. What's that? You're really lacking the charm. Learn from Elizabeth. Even her jealousy is cute. She's just given birth, but still makes the effort to look stylish for me. Don't you think she's admirable? Aren't you embarrassed to be wearing such cheap clothes and no makeup? Not embarrassed at all. I was just going to the grocery store, I replied, my tone calm. I was dressed simply in a clean white t-shirt and jeans. Nothing fancy, but perfectly suitable for a casual errand. That's exactly the problem. That's why I grew tired of you. Enough already. We have nothing to do with each other. Just go home, William dismissed, waving his hand dismissively. Annoyed by my indifferent response, he continued as if shooing away an unwanted pet. No, this is actually my house. That's why I was waiting for the elevator. I corrected him firmly.
What?
Seriously? You're lying, right, Mia? That joke isn't funny at all, Elizabeth said, her expression a mix of confusion and disbelief. I had no choice but to clarify. I've been living with my parents in this high-rise for 8 months now. My father was approached by the salespeople when there was talk of selling the land he owns here. They told him that living in a high-rise would be more convenient than a single-family home, especially as he's getting older. Their stunned faces confirmed they hadn't expected this twist. Living in the same building as them was the last thing they thought possible, and yet, here I was, completely legitimate in my presence, turning their assumptions on their heads. Although the entire ground of the high-rise wasn't originally our land, my family owned a significant portion of it. During the negotiations for the sale, we managed to secure a unit on one of the higher floors for far less than the market value. This revelation shocked William. You are landowners with that much money? If I'd known, I wouldn't have broken up with you. Give me back the compensation money. There was no need for a property settlement, was there? He exclaimed, grasping at straws. That's a separate matter, I replied coolly. The compensation was for your affair, and the property settlement was because we were married. They're not connected. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Elizabeth mumbling to herself, incredulous. I can't believe Mia is living in a high-rise. I thought I had totally won, she muttered under her breath, before glaring at me and snapping. But Mia, you don't have a baby or a loving partner, do you? I haven't lost yet. Look, I was never competing with you, Elizabeth. I'm thankful to you for giving me the chance to break up with William. Oh, and I'm moving out of my parents' place tomorrow, so I don't think we'll be seeing each other again. I informed them, closing the topic.
What? Why?
You just moved into a high-rise, both exclaimed, taken aback. I shrugged. Maybe it's a matter of different values. It just wasn't a good fit for my family. I explained that living in a high-rise came with challenges that didn't suit our lifestyle. We couldn't hang our laundry outside to dry in the natural sunlight and wind, which my mother and I preferred over using a dryer. The higher floors lacked balconies for safety reasons, and only a few windows could open. Additionally, the intense sunlight made our apartment unbearably hot, even with the air conditioning on. The building swayed noticeably even during minor earthquakes, a safety feature meant to prevent collapse, but nonetheless terrifying. Most stressful of all was the crowded elevator rides during the morning commute, which took longer since the elevator stopped on every floor. We decided to move back to a regular house with a garden, I concluded. Luckily, we were able to sell the apartment quickly for nearly the same price we paid for it. Both William and Elizabeth smirked at this news. Oh, so we'll never see each other again? So a high-rise wasn't suitable for commoners like you. It's more suited for an elite celebrity family like mine, William remarked smugly. I couldn't fathom how he reached such a conclusion, but it mattered little to me. His words reflected his unchanged, arrogant nature and reaffirmed my decision to move on from that chapter in my life. The simple truth was that our values and needs were vastly different, and I was content with my choices, unswayed by his shallow judgments. As I stepped into the elevator that had just arrived, I faced my ex-husband, delivering his own words back to him. It was a pivotal moment, a release from the pretentiousness he embodied, without the substance to back it up. He was unwilling to change, and I had grown utterly tired of his empty promises and lack of effort. With a deep breath, I felt a sense of closure. It was clear he was beyond changing, and it was time for me to say goodbye. As the doors began to close, I glanced at Elizabeth Hills, who stood beside my astonished ex-husband. In one final jab, I questioned, "By the way, are you sure the child is really yours?" My ex-husband, completely taken aback, could only muster a confused look. "What do you mean?" he stammered. I replied, simply but pointedly, exactly what I said. "Right, Elizabeth? You know what I mean." The doors closed, leaving the aftermath unseen. In truth, During our struggles to conceive, I had undergone medical tests, all of which indicated no issues on my side. I began to suspect the problem might lie with him, but he stubbornly refused to be tested. This was the last straw for me, prompting my departure. Later, I heard from a friend who attended Elizabeth's baby shower. Despite boasting about living in a luxury high-rise, they were actually on the third floor of an average building. Moreover, they had the audacity to demand expensive gifts and participation fees, only to serve cheap snacks. When a guest complained, Elizabeth lashed out, insisting everyone should be grateful just to attend. The situation escalated when my ex-husband tried to intervene, resulting in a heated argument and a chaotic scene, all sparked by my parting words. It turns out they were facing financial difficulties and had resorted to deceit to extract money from friends. The revelation caused outrage, and many friends left the gathering in disgust. As for me, I've moved on to a peaceful life in a single-family home with a garden, enjoying my days with my family and a new, adorable kitten. Our former high-rise was later found to be riddled with structural defects and illegal construction methods, making headlines daily. This news confirmed our timely escape from potential disaster. Now, as I fold the sun-warmed laundry with my kitten occasionally napping on the fresh clothes, I cherish these simple, peaceful moments. Each day confirms my good fortune and contentment, far removed from the turmoil of my past life. Today, like every other, is a good day.
My name is Tiana. I've been married to my husband Owen for 15 years. It's been a whirlwind of busy, stress-filled days. It was all because of my selfish mother-in-law, my opportunistic sister-in-law, and my incompetent husband who doesn't care for the family. It all started when my father-in-law Connor opened his CPTA, Certified Public Tax Accountant, office at his own house. My mother-in-law Alexis, by emphasizing my education, insisted us to live with them, saying, "Your bookkeeping skills are just what we need. If you're going to be at home anyway, you can also do the housework, right?" That's what she said, dumping not just the office assistant work on me, but also the daily cleaning and cooking. Whenever she's free, she's out shopping or dining, just enjoying herself. She had a clear preference, always favoring my sister-in-law Bellamy above others. Bellamy and her husband have kids and live about an hour away from us. They come to our place every weekend. They usually contact Alexis beforehand, and she would say, "Leave the kids' care to me." Hearing what Alexis said, Bellamy just rides on her coattails, saying, "Then I'll come over tomorrow," without considering our plans at all. Following Alexis's words, "Make yourself at home," Bellamy dumps her kids on me and does nothing herself. We have a daughter, but they have 3 boys. The amount of food they eat is a nightmare. When I ask for help with preparing meals, Bellamy turns sour, saying, "You're really going to make me work on my day off?" When I resist, saying I have other work besides household chores, so I'm short on time, Alexis intervened. "Are you belittling Bellamy for being a housewife? Let her relax while she's visiting. You're being mean," she admonished me. "That's right. Being a housewife is really hard." "Mother, you're so considerate and kind," Bellamy smiled at Alexis, taking her hand. Every time I remembered her smug look as she left, I would boil with anger. Just when the stress was so intense and felt like I was going to have a rash, my husband Owen made it worse. When I complained about Alexis and Bellamy's terrible behavior, he contradicted me. "Isn't housework your job? You manage it alone even when you're busy. So why do you want help? You're just trying to pass it off on someone else. Why do I have to take care of their family too? If that's the wife's job, then do it. If you don't like it that way, we can have a divorce. But do you think you can manage a divorce with no significant qualifications?" He smirked as if to say, "You couldn't possibly manage, could you?" Owen, whom I thought I married for love, became quite cold towards me after our honeymoon phase. He probably didn't like the fact that I prioritized my work over him, and that his father Connor had high expectations of me. "Jealous jerk," I screamed inside but stayed silent. I'm busy studying for my exams, he uttered, ending our conversation. He seems to be wanting to inherit the CPTA firm, but keeps failing the exams. You don't have any significant qualifications either, I wanted to scream at him. But in these tough times to get a job, it's scary to leave the household with just my bookkeeping skills. It's not the perfect timing yet, I told myself. The only neutral person in this household was Connor. He showed no interest in home affairs and let Alexis rule. But as a professional in work, he was respectable. Unlike Alexis and Owen, who dumped everything on me, he carefully taught me the job and even suggested I become a CPTA. I realized that having a goal made it easier to overcome hardships. The future goal Connor gave me became my anchor. I studied hard in my spare time, passing one CPTA exam after another. I'll never forget the joy when I finally passed them all. With my practical experience, I was registered as a CPTA and became a true member supporting my father-in-law's office. Owen resented my decision to pursue a career as a CPTA and became increasingly distant. I tried to be nice, saying good job to him while he was studying, but he snapped back. Are you looking down on me? You really are an uncharming woman. He also demeaned me, bringing up his brother and Bellamy. He's lucky for having a beautiful wife like Bellamy. Why did I marry someone like you? We only have one daughter. Even my mom says you're the worst, he said disappointedly. Alexis still favored Bellamy, pampering her kids more than our daughter. Bellamy, getting too confident, even left her kids with us to go on a trip with her husband. My dear Bellamy is such a good girl. She even brings us souvenirs considering we can't travel. Compared to her, you're always grumpy and acting all high and mighty now that you're a CPTA. Really, you're such an unpleasant daughter-in-law, my mother-in-law accused me. I've become accustomed to how sarcastic Alexis was and wondered what I should do. I had divorce papers prepared because I thought I would leave my husband once I became a CPTA, but now I'm unsure about the timing. I had thought that once I got the CPTA license, I could leave anytime. But I enjoyed working with Connor, which made it hard to leave. But what finally pushed me to make my choice was Alexis's hospitalization. It happened right before summer vacation. She fell down the stairs and broke a bone. While she was in the hospital, she suddenly said to me, Bellamy and her family will be coming, so make sure you take good care of them. What? They're coming even when she's not here? How brazen can they be? I was stunned, but I knew complaining to Alexis was pointless. So when I got home, I called Bellamy. She was cheerful on the phone, saying, Thanks for being able to look after the kids again this summer. But when I told her I couldn't, because Alexis was hospitalized, she responded, What? I've already made plans for vacation with my husband, and it's too late to cancel now. Don't you understand? Are you that stupid? She sassed me. Her attitude changed drastically and mocked me. I snapped back at her. That's my line. Every year you don't think about others and just do as you want. I have work and I'm busy, but still, you want to leave your kids with us while you go on a long vacation with your husband? Don't be ridiculous. You're not allowed to come, I retorted. Bellamy was silent for a moment after my retort. Then she said, What's with that attitude? Mom hates you anyway. I'm telling on you, and hung up. As expected, she immediately tattled to Alexis and now Owen. Owen called me in saying, I heard you told Bellamy not to come to our house. You are really the worst. You've really disappointed me this time. A heartless woman like you deserves a divorce. Who's the worst here? Just then, something in me snapped. Wait, I had been waiting for this day, a chance to make my choice. Fine. I agree on getting a divorce, I replied, and calmly started to fill in the divorce papers I had prepared. What are you doing? Owen exclaimed. Surprised by my readiness, he was speechless. I'm going to send them to court. What else do you think? I stated. Shaken back to reality by my words, he rushed out of the room. While leaving the room, Owen shouted at me. Even if you beg and cry, I won't take back what I said, he snapped. After that, I went to see Connor. I explained everything to him, and he said, "I'm sorry for all the stuff you've been through." I never felt resentment towards him, even though he had never defended me. "All I can do is wish you well on your new journey," he added. Perhaps Connor felt guilty towards me, since Owen refused to discuss anything about the divorce. Connor helped me with child support and property settlement, and finally, by the time things had settled down, 6 months had passed. I was busy opening my own private office when I received a message from Owen that said Connor had been hospitalized. The diagnosis was terminal cancer. When I rushed to the hospital, Owen, Alexis, my former brother-in-law, and his wife Bellamy were there. Seeing me, Alexis said with a smile, "Oh, Tiana, it's good to see you well. Given Connor's condition and the office to worry about, try not to hold on to anger indefinitely. Come back to us," she uttered in a conciliatory tone. Owen, trying to sound sweet, said, "I'll forgive you if you apologize, so come back home." But he wasn't very good at it. "No, thank you. I'm just here to visit today," I replied. Unable to hold back, Bellamy burst out, "They're asking you kindly, and you're still so cold. Let's not rely on someone like Tiana, especially now that the office is in danger," she concluded. "Bellamy!" Alexis and Owen exclaimed, turning pale. But I had already guessed their motives. "Stop it. It's shameful. You've realized her worth too late," Connor said quietly, having watched the disgraceful scene in silence. "But without Dad, what will happen to the office? How will we live?" Owen lamented. "You're being pathetic, a man over 40 whining like that. It's your responsibility now. Tiana is no longer family to us," Connor replied. "But that divorce doesn't count. Tiana needs the office too. Who else would hire a woman like her?" Owen ranted, still out of touch with reality. Connor sighed heavily. "Tiana has made it on her own. She has many clients who rely on her. She's a fully qualified CPA, unlike you, who still hasn't passed half the exams," my father-in-law continued. Owen was at a loss for words at that comment. Connor seemed to be aware of his condition, or maybe he was glad for my new beginning, had explained the situation to the clients. I handled and arranged work for me. Thanks to his support, I was able to start preparing my own office. "Really, Owen is such a hopeless child," Alexis remarked, sensing that her son was at a disadvantage. Then she pulled at my sleeve, saying, "Hey, Tiana, I think we can be close again. I've been having trouble with my leg since the injury. I need rehabilitation, and it's hard to manage things at home with this leg. Please come back," she begged. "Why don't you ask Bellamy for help with rehabilitation?" I coldly dismissed the idea. Bellamy snapped back on behalf of Alexis. "I'm busy with housework. I don't have time for that." Alexis was shocked by Bellamy's immediate refusal. "Bellamy?" she uttered in surprise. "I'm not going to take care of an old person. I hate that kind of thing," Bellamy replied. Connor burst out laughing at her frank aversion. "You've been spoiled by my wife all this time, and yet you dare to say Tiana is cold-hearted. I don't even want to see your face. Please leave," he demanded. Bellamy's face turned pale, and Connor then turned to his wife. "You're such a fool, keeping such a daughter-in-law around and losing a capable and reliable one like Tiana. Why don't you apologize and ask this useless daughter-in-law to take care of you?" he remarked. Connor's biting words left his wife speechless. As I stood there in shock, Connor said, "When you realize your time is limited, you find the courage to speak your mind." He chuckled at his own words. After that day, I continued to visit Connor in the hospital. Owen eventually had to close the office. He seemed to be struggling to find a job at his age. Alexis's leg got worse, limiting her outings and ability to do the housework. She forced Owen to do it all. Owen, being incapable of managing their home, left it in a mess. They must be having a hard time. Bellamy hasn't been near the family's house since that day in the hospital. My brother-in-law seems to have run out of patience with his wife, who rejected his mother. and the warmth in their home has apparently cooled completely. My wife was complaining the other day about you being a cold daughter-in-law, Connor chuckled, as if he was stunned. I couldn't be there for his last moments, but I was able to express my gratitude to him. What I can do for him is to maintain the relationships he had built. I'm determined to do my best. Marriage was something I had dreamed of for years. I had always been focused on my work, but I had high hopes for this marriage. Unfortunately, reality didn't quite live up to my expectations. Show more respect, my mother-in-law said. Be more aware of your role as a wife. I did my best with the housework every day, yet I was treated unfairly by my husband and mother-in-law. This wasn't the marriage life I had envisioned. I was determined to break free from this situation, no matter what it took. My name is Arya and I'm 33 years old. I had been single until recently. I wasn't particularly keen on getting married, and after graduating from college, I was fully engrossed in my work. Before I knew it, I had turned 33 while my friends were getting married one by one, and even having kids. I met Elijah through a friend, and we decided to get married after only 3 months of dating. Elijah is the same age as me and seemed eager to get married too. Did we rush into things too quickly? Sometimes I wonder, but we've been enjoying a peaceful marriage life without any major arguments. It had been about 6 months since our wedding when my mother-in-law, who lived with her own mother-in-law, hurt her back. My grandmother-in-law was already quite frail, so my mother-in-law had been taking care of her. As soon as we became aware of what had happened, my husband and I immediately discussed the situation, and we decided to live with my in-laws. To be honest, I had thought we might end up living together eventually, even before we got married, but I never thought it would happen so soon. My husband seemed to sense my unease and said to me, "My mom and grandma are both kind. You don't have to worry too much." When they congratulated us at the wedding, I had a good impression of my mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law, so I wasn't particularly worried about suddenly deciding to live with them. On moving day, when we arrived at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law greeted us with a big smile. "Welcome, both of you. Please make yourselves at home." "Thank you very much for having us. We appreciate it," I responded. After exchanging greetings, we entered the house and placed our luggage in the designated room before heading to the living room together. Then my mother-in-law suddenly stopped us in our tracks. "Hold on, Arya. What are you doing settling down? I need you to clean the house, please," she calmly demanded. "Clean?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, clean," she repeated. "The cleaning supplies are next to the entrance. Just clean the entire house quickly, will you?" she added. My mother-in-law gave me instructions with a smile, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. How could she ask me, a guest who just arrived, to clean the entire house on the first day? And she didn't seem to have any remorse. Since it was the first day, I reluctantly followed her orders and began cleaning. My mother-in-law chatted with me periodically and made sarcastic remarks about my work. "You need to polish this more thoroughly. There's still dust left. Is your eyesight bad, Arya?" she stated. Each time I felt humiliated, but I said to myself that she must have been in a tight spot, unable to clean the house because of her sore back. So I endured it. One day I heard my mother-in-law screeching, "I take care of my mother-in-law and the household chores. That's why we started living together, right? So why haven't you quit your job yet? What's the matter?" she suddenly asked me. Her question confused me and I didn't immediately find myself to answer her. Besides, I never said I was quitting my job. Just then, my husband, who was listening nearby, interjected, "Calm down, Mom. My salary isn't that high, and to be honest, we are grateful for Arya working. We'll be able to cover your and Grandma's expenses with our combined incomes," he explained. "Well, that may be true," his mother responded, her voice trailing off. Thank goodness if my husband could keep his mother from making a scene like this, I could continue living with them without any problems. Just as I was thinking that, something happened. Well, Arya is a capable woman. She should be able to handle work and take care of everything at home too, my husband said unexpectedly. Huh? At his words, I couldn't help but double take. Wait a minute, wasn't he supposed to support me? On top of not being able to slack off at work, now I'm expected to cover the living expenses of my in-laws and endure the housework every day? Ignoring my confusion, Elijah beamed at me and asked, It's all right, isn't it, Arya? Even his mother nodded in agreement, looking satisfied. Well, if Elijah says so, it's fine, Arya. It's okay to keep working, but please make sure to take care of the house too, okay? With those words, they made it clear that they expected me to handle everything. Even if I insisted that I was busy with work and needed help with the housework, neither my husband nor my in-laws offered to help. Despite having more free time than me and getting home earlier, Elijah never lifted a finger to help out. Instead, he called out to me as soon as he came home from work. Hey, Arya, I'm hungry. Can you make me something to eat? I couldn't take it anymore. Hey, you come home 2 hours earlier than me, so why don't you make dinner occasionally, Elijah? I protested. Why me? That's the wife's job. My mom already said, he replied. What's with his mother? He keeps mentioning her every chance he gets. Is he a mama's boy? He was so obedient to his mother that I felt like pointing it out. As for his mother, she made some kind of sarcastic comment to me every day. Arya, you've been slacking off with dinner lately, haven't you? I'm patient with the packed lunch, so please make a proper meal for dinner, she insisted and continued. I can't stand it when my room is dirty when I wake up. Would you clean up before going to work? She made such unreasonable demands without any hesitation. If I refused, she would start complaining again, so I reluctantly started waking up at 4 a.m. to do all the housework before going to work. My mother-in-law wasn't satisfied with just that, and suddenly said, this one day, Arya, I heard from Elijah that you're earning quite a bit, right? I can't work anymore, so I was hoping you could support me with some financial assistance. My mother-in-law made an imposing request. Support? Wait a minute, I protested. Our living expenses have increased more than ever, and I don't have the luxury to support you financially, mother-in-law, I added. What are you saying? You got promoted and your salary increased, didn't it? I know everything from Elijah. Anyway, how about $500 this month? That's reasonable, right? She uttered in a demanding tone. No way, I thought. At first, I refused to give her money, but my mother-in-law persistently demanded it. In the end, she even began to tell outright lies. Arya, when are you going to give me the money you promised to support me every month? You said you wanted to help me, didn't you? She reasoned. What? Wait a minute. I never said anything like that, I retorted. Arya, is that true? Then you should pay my mother properly. My husband, who had been listening to the conversation, interjected. Well then, Arya, I'll leave it to you, my mother-in-law added. From then on, it was like living in hell. If I didn't obey my mother-in-law, she would verbally abuse me, and my husband would call me things like lazy, slow, and failure. Honestly, I wanted to run away, but my pride wouldn't allow it. At 33, having finally gotten married and received numerous congratulations from family and colleagues, I couldn't come to terms with the idea that I would be getting divorced in such a short time. I continued to work, struggling with my feelings. However, overwork took its toll, and I fainted. My husband and mother-in-law didn't visit me in the hospital, but instead sent a cold message. Get well soon and get back to the chores. Even though I was at my limit, I tolerated it, feeling alone in the hospital room. My boss came to visit me. What happened? It's not just because of work, is it? Natalie, my longtime colleague and boss, asked. I couldn't hide anything from him. I told my boss everything about my situation, waking up at 4 in the morning, taking care of everything at home before going to work, and accumulating fatigue. After listening to my story, my boss looked me straight in the eyes and said, Why did you put up with him for so long? You should divorce the man already. I was stunned by what my boss said and couldn't speak. She's never once criticized me. But we finally got married, I said. What are you talking about? If you stay with someone who's causing you so much pain, you'll just end up ruining your life. Is this really the person you want to spend the rest of your life with? She inquired, perplexed. My boss's words hit me hard. That's right. I got married to be happy, but the marriage itself was causing me so much suffering. You're talented and a good person. You are not a failure. You'll just suffer if you're around people who don't recognize your worth, Natalie continued. Finally, I woke up from my stupor, thanks to my boss's words. Yes, I will divorce my husband. I'll leave that house and show them. It's embarrassing to get a divorce after just getting married. But I can't care about appearances anymore. However, I didn't want to just get a divorce. After discussing it with my boss, I came up with a plan. To execute the plan, I decided to live with my in-laws for 2 weeks after being discharged from the hospital, just like before. I'd get my revenge on them like they'd never seen before. Over the past 2 weeks, I endured unreasonable treatment from my husband and mother-in-law. Now, the day of reckoning had arrived. It was my grandmother-in-law's birthday, and many relatives gathered at my in-laws' house. As instructed by my mother-in-law, I prepared the dishes to serve everyone. After finishing all the preparations, I started getting ready to leave the house. When it was time, the relatives arrived, and the meal began. My room was across from the living room, so I could hear my mother-in-law's complaints very clearly. Honestly, where is our daughter-in-law and what is she doing? Everyone is here now, she said. The relatives asked one after another. Arya is living with you, right? That's great, right? They marveled. But that girl can't do any house chores. In the end, I end up doing everything, my mother-in-law objected. Oh, really? There must be a reason, one of the relatives asked. She's so late and slow. She's really becoming a nuisance, the mother-in-law replied. I think it's time to call Arya, Elijah said to his mother. Following his words, my mother-in-law came to my room. Hey, Arya, everyone is gathered. Come on, bring your suitcase and head to the living room. As instructed, I carried my suitcase and headed to the living room. After my husband saw my situation, he asked loudly, What's the package? I answered loudly enough for everyone to hear. This? It's just a package that I'm taking with me when I leave. My mother-in-law panicked and interjected, What nonsense are you talking about? This is just like you. Without giving anyone a chance to respond, I played the voice recorder that I had with me. There were plenty of recordings of my mother-in-law and husband berating me. Your wife is such a loser. Why did you even marry her? My mother-in-law had said. I was desperate at 33, so I just picked her up. But she is completely useless, came Elijah's voice. Why don't you remarry a young girl? You can work more efficiently, my mother-in-law responded. Yeah, that's a good idea, my husband added. When the recording ended, my mother-in-law's face was the color of chalk. Hey, what's this all about? The relatives began to stir and speak up. Is that Elijah's voice? Arya, were you bullied by them? One relative asked. I mean, isn't it terrible to say such things to someone who's living with you? Another relative inquired. One after another, the relatives listened to the recordings and began to get angry, leaving my husband and mother-in-law with no choice but to bow their heads. As you all heard, I have had enough. Despite my best efforts, I have received insults and criticism. Therefore, I have decided to leave, I announced. Hold on, Arya. Please calm down, my mother-in-law pleaded. But it was too late. I'm calm. It's you who should calm down. If anyone should be worried about the truth being exposed to our relatives, it should be you, I replied. My pointed remarks caused my mother-in-law to blush and look down. Then my husband spoke up, looking frustrated. Arya, this is a joke, right? I never meant to insult you. I just wanted you to be a good wife, he mumbled. A good wife is waking up at 4 a.m. every day and handing over $1,000 to my mother-in-law each month. If that's what makes me a good wife, then I don't want to be a good wife. I would rather be alone for the rest of my life, I retorted firmly. But my husband tried to continue. As they listened to our conversation, the relatives started murmuring among themselves. She hands over $1,000 every month, one relative exclaimed. That's terrible, another whispered. Amidst the whispering, my husband shed tears, but at this point there was no room for sympathy. Goodbye. I'll contact you later regarding the divorce. With those words, I left my in-laws' house. Afterward, I proceeded with the divorce proceedings at the law firm. The verbal abuse on the voice recorder served as evidence, and I also succeeded in claiming compensation from my mother-in-law and husband. They received criticism from all our relatives, and were even estranged from the family. Furthermore, it was my grandmother-in-law's birthday on the day all of this was revealed. She was livid and kicked my mother-in-law and husband out of the house. Now, my husband and mother-in-law live in a run-down apartment on his meager salary, and it seems their life is quite difficult since they have to pay me compensation. Serves them right. They got what they deserved. On the other hand, my stress seems to have dissipated, and my physical condition is much improved. I go to work every day and am more focused on my duties than ever before. My boss recognized my effort and even mentioned the possibility of a promotion. Many things suddenly made sense. I have stopped obsessing over marriage. Right now, I want to cherish things that I can devote myself to and live day by day.